Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome. Today I define myself as guest moderator. I am Harun Pirim from Starkville, Mississippi. So we have our guest speakers, and I'm just moderating on behalf of Lighthouse for Humanity. I believe we just know what's going on since these meetings are just continuing since long. So our speakers today, again, Colin Turner from England, and new speaker today is Salih Tolga Özaslan. I met him today as well. He's very nice. We are about to start today's topic, which is about ego. I don't know, I'm going to start by asking this ego thing, because the real topic is I, ene, what is called in Arabic, ene. And I don't know if ego is the correct translation, or if we can translate I as ego. This will be the question in the first place. But the topic will be about ego, which is very important. To have an introduction, I want to mention, we are students of Quran. We are trying to understand Allah's message to us individually and to all of us as society. So this is our ultimate guidance, right? To understand our particular problems and the problems in general. So in this sense, we have different occupations, jobs, but we are together in the same classroom to understand the teachings of Quran. So what is in common is just being student in front of Quran. That's the thing. And Said Nursi, who is the writer of this tafsir, commentary of Quran, actually proposing that a real commentary of Quran should have a team in which there will be people of different expertise, such as engineers, social scientists, and all different type of people. I think that's the point. We are coming together from different backgrounds to be able to understand better the message and the meaning of Quran, Allah's words, ultimate words, for better. Sorry for this long introduction, but I felt the need to just state why we are all together and why you see every week different people from different expertise. All right. Then let's just move. We just start with 30th words. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inna aradna al-emanete ala semavati wal-ard wal-jibali فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقنا منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. This is from Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 72. Translation is, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, we did indeed offer the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused to undertake it, being afraid thereof, but man assumed it. Indeed, he is most unjust, most foolish. We shall indicate a single jewel from the great treasure of this verse as follows. The I, ene, is one component, one aspect of the numerous aspects of the trust, from the bearing of which the sky, earth, and mountains shrank, and of which they were frightened. Indeed, from the time of Adam until now, the I has been the seed of a terrible tree of Zakkum, and at the same time of a luminous tree of Tuba, Şecere-i Tuba, which shoot out branches around the world of mankind. Before attempting to elucidate this vast truth, we shall give an explanation by way of an introduction which will facilitate the understanding of it. Just as I is the key to the divine names, which are hidden treasures, so is it the key to the locked talisman of creation. It is a problem-solving riddle, a wondrous talisman. When its nature is known, both the I itself, that strange riddle, that amazing talisman, is disclosed, and it discloses the talisman of the universe and the treasures of the necessary world. The key to the world is in the hand of man and is attached to his self. For while being apparently open, the doors of the universe are in fact closed. God, Allah Almighty, has given to man, by way of a trust, such a key called the I, Ene, that it opens all the doors of the world. He has given him an enigmatic eye with which he may discover the hidden treasures of the creator of the universe. But the eye is also an extremely complicated riddle and a talisman that is difficult to solve. When its true nature and the purpose of its creation are known, as it is itself solved, so will be the universe. The all-wise maker gave to man as a trust an eye which comprises indications and samples that show and cause to recognize the truths of the attributes and functions of his dominicality, what is rububiyya, so that the eye might be a unit of measurement and the attribute of dominicality and functions of divinity, uluhiyya, might be known. However, it is not necessary for a unit of measurement to have actual existence. Like hypothetical lines in geometry, a unit of measurement may be formed by hypotheses and supposition. It's not necessary for its actual existence to be established by concrete knowledge and proofs. Yeah, quite long and quite bold statements, and I want to just start. Colin Hocam, I want to start by you and start asking by the topic itself, the I, Ene. Is it proper to translate Ene as I? And in addition, can I ask you how to understand and how to conceptualize this topic at the beginning?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think you've done what you normally do, and you read my mind. You do it quite a lot. I was thinking just before you started that ego is not really a suitable rendering in English of Ana. Ego, as people are probably aware, is a Freudian concept. According to Freud, who is the father of psychoanalysis, as we all know, human personality is very complex and is more than a single component. And this is something that Ustad Nursi also points out, that Ana is just a very thin strand in the thick rope of human psychosocial and psychospiritual makeup. Freud basically compartmentalizes the self into three compartments: the id, the ego, and the superego. And these different elements all work together to create very complex human behaviors. So ego is a particular compartment of the self, which Freud explains, and I don't think that this is the place to go into that because it would be too much of a digression. But I would contend that ego is not really a suitable translation because of the Freudian connotations. This gives us difficulty, of course, when we're translating. And what I normally do with Ana, I call it the human eye. Obviously not the eye that we see through, but the I, the letter I, which means me, I, me. So the human eye. And then obviously this has to be contextualized and unpacked. But I think using ego, there are too many connotations, particularly for people who know something about psychoanalysis. I don't know too much about Freudianism, but I do know that ego has certain connotations which don't fit with Ana. So I think we need to abandon that translation. What do you think?
Sounds good, and I agree. So that we are not trapped with ego definition, we should concentrate on understanding what I, ene, is instead.
I think the second part of your question, if I understood it correctly, is how do we contextualize the subject in general? And how do we frame it? I think it has to be framed as Ustad Nursi does within the concept of the trust. We know that this amana is something that was offered to all of creation, actually. And we're told that the mountains and the skies and the seas and all of these sort of emblems of strength and power, they all turned it down. But humankind was the one who accepted it. The trust, basically, and again, I don't want to digress too much about the trust, but the trust is was given to humankind. The trust offers whoever accepts it the ability to know God and to experience God through his beautiful names and attributes of perfection. And why this trust was so momentous was that it contained a component which allowed the trust to go one of two ways, either to the positive or either to the negative, either to Ahsan al-Taqweem, to the highest of the high, or to the lowest of the low. So it's inbuilt, it's hardwired in the trust that it can go either way. Because whoever accepts a trust has to undertake the responsibility to use that trust in accordance with the wishes of the one who gives the trust. If you discharge your responsibility successfully, then you get the rewards. If you fail, you have to face the consequences. And in the context of the trust which was offered by God, the responsibility is a huge responsibility, because what it means in practice is reflecting God's names and acting not only in his name, but also in complete accordance with his will. It is basically being the vicegerent, the representative of God on earth in every respect. And that in practice means being able to reflect all of God's names, not reflection in this attenuated version that the angels have, where they only reflect one or two names, and various other beings in creation reflect one or two or more names. Human beings reflect all of the names. So in practice, what that means to accept such an undertaking is that we grasp the significance of the trust. And it's only when we grasp the significance of the trust and what it means in actuality to accept that trust, only then we can understand why the heavens and the mountains refuse the challenge. They are, of course, symbols of might and of grandeur, but they refused the challenge. They understood intuitively the dangers that this trust may lead to. You know, whether we bear the trust faithfully or whether we go back on our commitment depends, for the most part, on how we understand what is the most important component of our makeup as human beings. And that is the aspect of our being which enables us to differentiate ourselves from other beings. And that is known in Arabic as ana, in English as I, in Turkish as ben. This is the key component of the trust. And it is the I which has the potential to cause so many problems. Ustad Nursi's exposition of the human I, of Ana, and its centrality to self-knowledge, God knowledge, and faith in God is, I think, among the most important discourses on the psycho-spiritual nature of human beings, and also on the creator-creation relationship. It's my humble opinion that without Ana, we cannot understand either ourselves or God. And Ustad Nursi, I think, to my knowledge, is the only scholar that I have been able to find who, in the past 500 years, since Ghazali and his discourse on the sicknesses of the soul, there have been very few scholars who have, with such meticulousness, with such care and attention, unpacked this issue of the human eye, what it means to be able to say I. So I think that is how we should approach this. And sorry for elongating my answer.
Thank you. It's not elongating. I think it's very nice. I wish you can make it longer and longer. We are here to understand all together. Before moving by some paragraphs, also I want to ask Salih Tolga. Salih, what are your comments on this, the start of this word, and how do you put this into context, and how is your first implication on this start?
Assalamu alaikum, first of all, and thank you, Jazakallah, Colin Abi, for the beautiful introduction. And this is a very tough issue, tough topic, but the major, you have listed already the basic principles that we have to comprehend in order to speculate on what I means. But before we proceed further, I think that there might be benefit in highlighting a nuance of this verse and the verse following this one. In Quran, in the following verse, Allah is saying, so that Allah will punish hypocrite man and woman and polytheistic man and woman, and Allah will turn in mercy to believing man and woman, for Allah is all forgiving and most merciful. So these verses come one after the other, and this the second verse kind of is a brief tafsir of the preceding one and gives more resolution about who is meant by human in the verse that is at the beginning of the slide. And actually in the slides, the translation uses man. However, the verse uses insan. I guess human is a better translation. I don't know. But we know that all pronouns and word choices in the Quran definitely have some deep meanings. And these two verses are definitely not an exception to this. From the distinction of the word choices between these two verses, and the preceding one, Allah uses insan, and the second one, Allah uses pronouns which refer to man and woman, we can say from this distinction that there's at least one aspect of the trust that is common to all humanity, while subcategories of the trust applies to man and woman and maybe many other smaller groups of humanity. Nevertheless, Ustad Nursi concentrates on a particular aspect of trust in this treatise. In the introductory sentence, he gives a disclaimer and says basically that in this treatise, he's going to lecture on only one and maybe the most important, vital, perilous aspect of trust, that is I, and is actually common to both man and woman and pretty much every human. Hence, this basically constitutes a topic that everyone has to have a good understanding of. On the other hand, if we look at other treatises by Ustad Nursi, such as Message for the Sick, A Guide for the Youth, A Guide for the Woman, we can, inshallah, broaden our understanding of what is meant by trust, because in those other treatises, Ustad Nursi is establishing subtle connections to trust, because if you think carefully, the trust takes the different forms. For example, for a sick, his sabr is the trust. He has to be patient. Or for a young man, it's his chastity. Or for an old man, it is to be keep up with. He has to be hopeful of the mercifulness of Allah for the hereafter. So this trust has a lot of meanings depending on the context, but in the broadest sense, the study is going to give us some further explanation. All of these lesser meanings are unfolded aspects of the same trust. And basically, I was very curious about why Ustad has said one aspect of numerous aspects, or one component. He's highlighting that what he's going to talk about in this treatise is just one single component of the trust, And when I check this verse that comes after the verse in the beginning of the slide, Allah is referring to man and woman, which basically means that trust may take different forms depending on who you're talking about. But of course, Ustad is looking at the issue at a very high elevation and is going to come up with a very comprehensive explanation, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Tolga. So it's good that you mentioned the following verse. I just looked at the following and the previous words. Ma ba'de ma kable, since it's sometimes exciting to see the connection of the ayah with the following and the previous verses. As you mentioned, the following verse is pretty much connected, and also the previous verse is pretty much connected, but it's going to take also a lot of time to discuss these connections. But you just well said, and you said it shortly and beautifully. If you just let me go a little bit more on this, and I'm going to just ask questions to open discussion more. We shall indicate a single jewel from the great treasure of this verse. This is a very nice notion, right? We are trying to just understand a single jewel from the treasure of Quran. So that's always what we are doing, right? For all the verses. To understand Quran actually means, for our capacity, it's just a droplet. And it's something very, very small, but as valuable, let's say. The I is one component, one aspect of the numerous aspect of the trust, as you discussed, right? This is just one aspect, and there are some other aspects of the trust, from the bearing of which the sky, earth, and mountains shrank. Just I'm going to ask at this point, Colin Hocam, how can we understand sky, earth, and mountains shrank from trust? We know that they are unconscious. Is this totally something allegoric, or how can we bring this into meaning? How do you understand this?
It can be rhetorical in a sense, because we see that the sky, the earth, and the mountains are all phenomenal examples of grandeur and of strength and of solidity and stability. And what I think the message is trying to tell us is that, look, these phenomena, these created phenomena, all of which are expressive and emblematic of divine power, even they shrank from it. They didn't want to take it on because of the enormity of the trust. As for being conscious, I think that because of the angelic presence, all of the phenomena, all of the beings in creation are conscious. So it can be rhetorical, and it can also be actual. But Brother Saleh's explanation was a very beautiful one, and I hadn't actually taken on board this idea of the numerous aspects. I've read it so many times, but Anna is just one aspect. There are so many others which also have bearing on the issue. So this one alone, though, I think is the most momentous of all of these aspects. This ability to express and to reflect as a conscious mirror all of God's names, including free will, which is what differentiates human beings from other beings, I think. So it's this comprehensiveness of the representation that put fear into these symbols of solidity and of vastness and of power. So when you juxtapose human beings with the mountains and the sky and the earth, this little human being, is Jahl and Zulum. He accepted. Humankind accepted the trust. So it's partly rhetorical, and I think it's partly, I'm not going to say literal, but I think you know what I mean. It's not just rhetorical.
Right.
Yeah.
What about, I was going to ask later, but I think it's in connection, so it's good to ask now. Then why these two attributes, Zalum and Jehul. Why are these two attributes preferred for the condition of human being, just having the trust or accepting the trust, assuming the trust?
It's a very good question, because there is no way that we would have got away from bearing the trust, in actual fact. We talked recently about the fall of Adam, and my question was, did Adam fall or was he pushed? In other words, what was it, his taqdir, was it his fate to fall, or was it something that is affected solely by him? We had to, in a sense, we had to accept the trust, because it goes with the territory, as they say. It goes with being human. There has to be a being on earth who represents God in the most comprehensive of fashions. Just as there has to be a single human being from among all human beings who represents God at the most comprehensive of levels. And we have that in the form of the Insan Kamel, or the Prophet. So there has to be such a being, but at the same time, there is an element of it is nature and nurture, I think. That's the whole question.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? I can't really answer that question, because that itself is a conundrum. The nature-nurture aspect. We chose the trust. We chose to accept the trust. But in retrospect, could we have done anything else? I want to turn the question back on you. Because I can't answer it.
When I ask, it's good, logically, actually, I find it very relevant to consider the words themselves, like Zalum, Zulum. So when I ask what is Zulum, especially just reading the teachings of Nursi, we see that just the opposite, Adale, Adl. So the opposite is Adl, and I started thinking like Adl is the balance of all the emotions that we have. Mainly described in his tafsir, Isharatul Ijaz, he's talking about three different, let's say, mainstream emotions of human beings. I think this is also very traditional knowledge. We know that by scholars, philosophers, they all agree that human beings have three different emotions, let's say. You can explain this better, Colin Hocam. But, it looks like humans, Allah gave us the capacity of understanding his attributes. And whenever we diverge from these attributes, we are in a big zulum. So this is what I, in the first place, understand.
Yeah, I would confirm that. I mean, that's how I look at it as well, because it's as though the Quran is saying to us, and who do you think would accept this? Of course, it's human beings, because that's how they are. They're Jahil and they're Zalim to themselves. So of course they're going to accept it. So it's a kind of saying it goes with the territory. It's something that human beings would want to do anyway, but also at the same time, not to demean humankind. Our creation is such that we are able to comprehensively reflect as a conscious mirror all of God's names. So there is a sense of qadar here, of taqdir, that we had to be like this, but at the same time, there is no denying that we are Jahl and Zulum. And actually, ontologically speaking, creationally, we are, as you know, we are impotent, and we are poverty-stricken, and we are Jahil because we have no knowledge of our own, and also we are prone to evil. Now, this is not something negative. This is how we're created. We are prone to evil. We cannot create, and we cannot create good. We cannot do good. So this is not really Allah demeaning us. He's stating a fact. We don't have any knowledge of our own. And also we have this susceptibility to shar, to evil. And maybe that is a kind of explanation as to why we accept it. It should also be an explanation of our potentiality for reflecting the names and to become higher than the angels. You can only do that if you're starting from a position of jah. You know, knowledge only makes sense if there is Jah, and khair only makes sense if there is zulm or shar.
Yeah, that's a very nice point. As if any student, let's say a PhD student at the beginning is very in a state of jahil compared to whenever he's out of the program. But he just accepts the program without knowing what it takes.
Yeah, I think so.
May I just turn to Brother Salih? I want to have your comments on this. And in addition, I'm going to ask you about the coming passage. What does it mean to have the seeds of a terrible tree of Zakkum and also the luminous tree of Tuba? So let's first have your opinion for what Colin Hocam commented, and plus let's have the next line comment on this tree.
So the first question is about why insan is Zulum and Jahl, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So first off, the order matters in Quran. The word choice and the order of the words that Allah has chosen matters a lot. And but first of all, we have accepted Allah as our Rabb in a timeless time. I don't know how to tell this, but so it is mentioned in the Quran as Qalu Bala. Allah asks, "Am I not your Lord?" And the souls, the spirits say, "Bala, of course, that is true." We say, and definitely, I do not remember that time, that moment, and I don't think any of us remember that moment neither. And to my understanding is that Allah is speaking about the potentiality of the human being, as Colin Nabi just mentioned in his answer towards the end, I guess. So Allah is definitely Adil. He always manifests his names in accordance with the balance that he himself sets forth. And if he offers a trust to a being, which eventually happened to be the human being, it means that this human being has the capacity, whether or not he or she uses that capacity, is capable of bearing that heavy load. And of course, you're not talking about the material load. In this case, it, I guess, refers to the ability to respond and react properly to manifestations of names of Allah. So an example that comes to my mind, what it means to have the potential or the ability to respond to the manifestations of names of Allah is, for example, consider the two big messengers, Nabi Musa alayhi salam and Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Musa alayhi salam wants to hear words of Allah without any veil, and we know what happened. He could not bear the load. However, Rasulullah is Khatamul Anbiya, and he is the most beautiful of creation. He is Fakhri Kainat. He could have gone all the way up to Qab Qawsain and had a kind of a personal meeting with Allah. So this definitely requires much more bandwidth. He has the potential to have such kind of a direct meeting with Allah. When Allah says in the verse, at the end of the verse, Jahul, what I understand is, let me put it this way. If I talk about the container to be empty, you know that it can take some amount of water or whatever you put in that container. Which means if I'm talking about emptiness or fullness, it means that it has a potential. And if Allah is talking about Jahul, it means that human has such a vast potential to learn knowledge of Allah, ma'rifatullah. So I think this is what it means, because in other treatises, as far as making a comparison between, by the way, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. As far as making a comparison between an animal and a human.
I don't want to interrupt you. Please go on.
Okay. As far as saying that when an animal is born, like a deer or a cat, that animal pretty much knows everything that is required to sustain its life. However, when a human is born, all the way, I mean, until the end of his or her life, he or she still needs to learn. So this is a sign of the potential of human being to learn about Allah. So this jahul means that, okay, ya insan, be aware that you're born jahul. And if I'm calling you jahil, just be advised that you have to learn and be aware of your potentiality. And the ordering of Zalum and Jahul should definitely have a meaning. And what I understand from this ordering is usually, this is from personal experience. When I learn something about how ignorant I am, it usually follows some sort of zulum. I mean, I do something wrong, and then I learn how much knowledge I'm lacking in that particular thing. Like, for example, if I can't offer a certain prayer in time, or if I do not understand a certain like I might have an argument with my wife, let's say, and there are definitely many things that I miss. Normally, Rasulullah does not argue with his wives because he knows how to handle relations. So understanding or my awareness of my jahiliyyah usually precedes, is usually followed, or first comes zulum and then comes awareness about jahil. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
this is a very
makes
nice
sense.
point. You just practice wrong, then you learn. So it's very nice.
Yeah, or if you have a teacher, if you have a mentor, that's going to make life easier. But we often do not have, we don't have that luxury in today's world, unfortunately.
What about the next? Thank you for these nice explanations, really. And by the way, please, listeners, audience, if you have some questions, I'm sure you have, you can just ask it through chat so that I can reflect your questions as well. I'll try. We can go to the next line about these Shejere Zakkum, which is, you know, tree of Zakkum and luminous tree of Tuba. How this makes sense in connection to previous lines?
As a question to me or
yes,
Colin
to you.
Abi? Okay.
To you.
So Zakkum tree is, I guess, a tree in Jahannam, and this is how the people of Jahannam, God forbid, is fed. So there's definitely a metaphorical aspect of this sentence, but so let me begin like this. So in the sentence, in the first sentence, it started saying, sky, earth, and mountains. Sorry, this is the verse: sky, earth, and mountains. And the order of the words sky, earth, and mountains is familiar to a reader of Nursi because he's following the same order in Ayatul Kubra, the seventh ray. If for those who don't know what seventh ray is talking about, it is the executive summary is a voyager is traveling the cosmos and asking from everything that he observes the creator of the universe. So the voyager is continuously asking the meanings behind what he is observing. And in his observation, the first thing that catches his attention is the skies in the universe. And then a few stopping places after this, the voyager visits the Earth, and then he further goes down in detail and then visits mountains. So there's definitely some meanings that we have to dig further. But basically, sky, earth, and mountains for man, if we talk with the according to the tafakkur in Ayatul Kubra, sky, earth, and mountains and everything in between are observed. And the voyager, the traveling man, is the observer. And the relation between the observer, the voyager, and the observed creation is obviously not symmetric. That is, the observed one never becomes the observer. However, the observer, the human being, can both be the observer and also become the observed one, because human can make emphasis tafakkur. He or she can contemplate his or herself. So through observing the creation and attributing the embroideries of the creation, and also appreciating the manifestations of the names of Allah in the universe, the human observer gains such a superiority over the rest of the creation that this superiority can never be matched or beaten by means other than observation, contemplation, pondering, tafakkur, and other certain conclusions supportive of the fact that there is a creator behind the veil of the manifest universe. So human nature, human in this nature, what I mean by in this nature is a human that observes the universe and eventually comes to some conclusions supportive of the fact that there is a creator behind the veil, attains such an exceptionally high rank. And this attainment of such an extremely high rank is possible only when these abilities given by Allah is employed for the sake of understanding the purposes of the creator in the universe. And the same ability, the exact same ability, when not used for this particular purpose at all or in part, causes descension of the man into the lowest of the low. So I think it's all about whether we observe, and eventually when we observe, do we come to the conclusion, the honest conclusion that yes, behind the veil there is a creator, and our creator is such and such.
Thank you. Thank you, Tolga, for just getting deeper and deeper for this. Colin Hocam, can I ask you the same? And actually, Tolga didn't talk much about these two trees. Maybe you may want to. I'm not asking the tree, you know, I'm asking what this tree represents, you know, and in connection to Ene. It seems like he's talking about the history of humankind, right? So how come history of humankind is connected to I?
As Brother Saleh told us so eloquently, the Ana is only one aspect of the trust. And the Ana is this sort of unavoidable rite of passage in our creational becoming, you know, in the creational becoming of humankind. This Ana is a very, very important marker. And we know that the trust was momentous with repercussions that are possibly so severe that, you know, this trio, the sky, the earth, and the mountains, had absolutely no desire to have anything to do with it. And that fate fell to humankind, to humankind, human beings, whose susceptibility to self-delusion and self-damage are such that they accepted with little or no hesitation, you know. And we've had this really lovely explication of Jahl and Zulum today, and I think I've understood it thanks to the explanations and the input properly for the first time. As well as being Jahl and Zulum, we also have great potential, you know. We have as much potential as we are Zulum for goodness, and we have for accepting goodness and reflecting goodness, and we have as much potentiality for knowledge as we have Jahl. So these two have to be looked at together. So there's a negative and a positive, and then that maps onto the story of the trees. So once humankind has accepted the trust, the rest, as they say, is history. Or perhaps more realistically, we should say that the rest is more like hysteria than history, because the story of Ana is the story of utterly mixed fortunes. So Ana is the seed both for the paving of the way towards human spiritual greatness, and it's also the seed for following a path that can, at every single twist and turn, lead to abject spiritual wretchedness. So there is this bifurcation which is possible. You can go this way or you can go that way. You can be following this way and then suddenly you can make a detour and go that way. You know, Tuba and Zakkum. Ustad Nursi concretizes these two paths as trees, because a path is a solid thing underfoot, but a tree grows and develops. And sometimes some of the fruit is rotten and falls off. Sometimes a branch here and there gets a disease. And I think that is kind of emblematic of the fact that a tree doesn't always grow in the right direction. You know, you can get twisting trees, turny trees, but generally these fabled trees of heaven and hell, known as Tuba and Zakkum, they are living things. They grow and they develop. And I think they represent human growth, human progress, or human regress. So Anna functions as a seed of salvation, but it can just as easily function as a seed of perdition, you know, a seed of destruction. So there is this hardwired, innate duality in Anna, which can take us either way. And, you know, that's as it should be, because otherwise, how do we progress? You know, and progress and regress are on the same spectrum.
Yeah, very nice. Very well said.
Yeah. Colin Abi has come to a very nice point. And actually, I'm sorry, I would refer to 13 word, which is a very detailed explanation of what Colin Abi has just mentioned. And there, Ustad is basically comparing the results of the two civilizations. One is listening to Quran, and the other is listening to philosophy, godless philosophy. And Ustad is explaining the consequences of this, of having such two different mindsets. And when a person does not have the notion of existence of a God, then the feeling of freedom often results in going beyond the permissible sphere of a man, and often this turns into oppression, so the consequences of such kind of a teaching or such kind of a mindset ends up in a situation where the fruit of such a civilization feels nothing other than the fruits of the Zakkum tree. So they are bitter. They are not nourishing. They are like poison, and we see the consequences. I was following the previous lectures on evil, and Colin Abi has referred to what has happened in Iraq, and I think this is a fruit of Zakkum tree, and definitely whomever has done this in I don't want to be political, or don't please take this personal, but what has happened in the Middle East are nothing but fruits of godless philosophy, and they are no better than the fruits of a Zakkum tree.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. I would concur, you know, absolutely.
I have 10 minutes to go, so we can just, if you're okay.
It goes too quickly. It passes too quickly.
Yeah, you know, I wish we have more time, but you know, it's kind of, we are here to understand. We are not here to just skip the passages. So
absolutely,
wherever we can go, we go. Just I'm not pushing myself to finish whatever we have today. So instead, we are trying to concentrate and understand together. If you don't have anything to say more on these, we can talk about the I in connection with divine names, these passages. What do you think? Shall I go over this new line?
I don't mind. Yeah.
Okay. Let's just go over this. Just as the I is the key to the divine names, which are hidden treasures, so is it the key to the locked talisman of creation. It is a problem-solving riddle, a wondrous talisman. This wonderful statement, actually, I think this is the 10 minutes that I want to discuss on. Colin Hocam, yes, here, how do we relate I to the divine names? How can I be the key to unlock these divine names? And how come these divine names themselves are hidden treasures? Maybe it's good to start from here. Divine names are hidden treasures. Treasures. How? How can we understand this? And how Ene unlocks these hidden treasures?
I think this is the subject of the rest of the treatise. Because he unpacks it from here, you know, just as the eye is the key, he will go on to explain how the divine names, which are hidden in plain sight out there in the creation, why the eye is the key to them. But before we go into the actual subject, this word talisman, there is a problem here, because in English, a talisman is something that you wear around your wrist or around your neck for good luck. It's, I think, tilsim in Turkish, and
Tilsim, yeah.
I'm not sure what it is. I know what it is in Persian, telesm, and telesm is a slightly different pronunciation, but it's basically, it's not really what Ustad is talking about here. What Ustad is saying is that the creation is a puzzle, and the puzzle needs to be known. It's not a talisman. I don't know what you think about this translation.
Yeah, since you explained the meaning of talisman, it's matter of translation. Most likely the intention was not having the meaning that you mentioned, I believe. But as you tell us, it doesn't fit. As you say here, talisman should be puzzle, again, riddle, or maybe mystery.
Well, I mean, can you explain to us what a tilsim is, as far as you understand from the word in Turkish, in Ottoman?
Yeah, tilsim, you know, it's something which is hidden, which is not obvious, and it is kind of magical in a way, but you can't understand how it works really.
Right. Okay. So it's like a muamma, a puzzle.
Muamma, and it's kind of it has a mystical part which you can make it powerful. So,
right. I see. Okay. So maybe there are shades of meaning there, but in English, definitely a talisman is like an amulet, you know, that you would wear to ward off evil power. You know, it's something quite unsuitable, I think, to use.
Yeah,
in this
maybe.
Context.
Talisman is muamma, as you said, but in addition to being muamma, like unknown, it also has some functionality, like opening a box or a lock. So we don't know how it works, but when it works, it opens something valuable. This is how I understand it.
I would prefer puzzle. You know, it's an unsolved puzzle. Creation is an unsolved puzzle. This is, of course, and I don't want to take up the time, but this idea of hidden treasure, of course, we know it comes from this famous Hadith Qudsi, where Allah says, "Kuntu kanzan makhfiyan," I was a hidden treasure, and I created humankind in order, and I'm paraphrasing here, in order to love, obey, worship me. So right. That is the source of the notion of hidden treasures. Those treasures are the names, of course. They're the names of Allah, which are, in a sense, hidden in plain sight. They are there visible in the creation. Maybe they are far too close for us to see them at first. You know, there is the intensity of divine presence blinds us to them. And so we need to unlock them. We need a key to unlock them. And that key is the eye. It helps us to solve the mu'amma, the puzzle, the unsolved puzzle, because, as we will see, the eye itself contains components which allow those doors of creation to open. In other words, we have samples or reflections or manifestations of the names. I don't want to say too much because that is what comes after this. But the eye has this sort of power to make the riddle of creation, to solve the riddle of creation, to solve the puzzle of creation.
Thank you, Brother Tolga.
Yeah, I mean,
you have a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it short, but in connection with what we started saying in the 13th treatise, we know that the consequences of having your lecture from having lectured from philosophy, godless philosophy, or Quran, the outcome becomes very, very different. One results in tons of evil, and the other results in a world that is a pleasure to live in. But the thing is, as you said, is the riddle that we have to understand and solve in this problem. And Ustad insistently draws our attention to a subtle yet important fact, which is that there are two ways of understanding I. One is the easy one, which seems to be obvious to a superficial mind, but it is a false understanding. This group, as far as I understand, sees I as a source of pleasure and feeds it through various material and immaterial food, metaphorically speaking, and that's it. The tastes attained through the eye do not conduce to the knowledge of Allah, Ma'rifatullah. And since this path is easy, seeing I as just a source of pleasure and self-satisfaction is easy, and it is also appealing to the animal and vegetable sides of aspects of human. The other path is very subtle. So because the first one conceals the second one, and the second path, which is the correct one, as Ustad is explaining in this treatise, is visible to only the reflective minds. Many of us at all, or in part, fall inattentive of the true path, unfortunately. So this is why this riddle is so difficult. So I is because the studies in some part of the collection says that I, nafs, ana, is the source of all pleasures, and we are allowed to have pleasure, and often we get trapped in pursuit of pleasures, and the other aspect of I is hidden.
I have a nice question here, by the way, in connection to what you're explaining, and also the word talisman, Colin Hojam, also. The question is ene something variable as a tiny part of the human ene? Where is it? Is it always with us? Maybe it's a variable talisman. We cannot take it off. If uncontrolled, it eats us up.
That's a very interesting question. It's always with us, but it doesn't have an external existence. That makes it even more enigmatic. There's no external existence. It doesn't have an actual existence, as Ustad goes on to say. You know, it's like the hypothetical lines in geometry, or it's like a black line drawn across a white wall. Until you draw the black line, you don't know that the white wall is there. So, and we always have that with us. You can't escape it. You know, it's hardwired. It's what we are, basically. It gives us our identity as human beings. You know, it differentiates us from the rest of creation. We can stand up and shout out loud, I. Other creatures can't do that. They don't have that ability. And as Saleh was just saying, you know, there's this duality all along, this duality. We've got Zakkum and Tuba. We've got the I that can be the path to spiritual self-perfection, or it can be the path to destruction, self-aggrandizement, you know, puffing up the self, hubris, arrogance, pharaonism. It can go either way. We've also got the duality of the line of prophethood and the line of philosophy. So there's these dualities, and Ustad Nursi plays with these dualities all the time, and he aligns them, juxtaposes them, makes us think all the time of these dualities which match each other. You know, there's this lovely symmetry in the Risale-i-Nur about, you know, these dualities. They match each other, they represent each other, they complement each other, and it's all through Risale. You find Ismi Harfi, there is a connection there as well. It's wonderful.
You know, I have to finish in just a minute. That's going very well, and I have to postpone some. There are very good questions coming. Last minute questions is kind of. I have to keep them for the next week. But just to make it complete in terms of this variable talisman, the question is keeping on. Can an intangible assumption become a variable talisman? So let's think about this. And also there is a nice question from Sister Gülsüm that I see. She's asking the connection between nefs and ene. Actually, I was expecting this question, the connection between nefs and ene. I think it's a very solid and legitimate question in the first place. Also, in addition, yeah, just she wants to put these concepts, nefs and ene, in the correct place. But we don't have time for this. I'm sorry, you know, to be punctual, but if you agree, we can start discussing on these maybe next week.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah.
Inshallah. And if you have last wording, and it's a good tradition to finish with a prayer. Tolga, can we take a small prayer from you if you're comfortable?
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.
Thank you, all of you. See you next week.
Thank you for your standing in today, Harun.
Thank you, Kalın Hocam.
Thank you
You're a
for
good
the
boss.
beautiful discussion.
Yes, thank you very
Assalamu
much.
alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.